Hey everybody, we are back in the shop. We've got our 97 TJ in here. We've got a whole table of parts. We're gonna put some of these parts on this vehicle one at a time. We're gonna dyno this thing, and we're gonna see once and for all, do bolt-on modifications make a difference, or is it all hype? Let's take a look at what we've got. All right, let's look at our table and see what we've got. Working from right to left, we've got some throttle body spacers, a cooled air intake, we've got a throttle body that's oversized, we've got some tune-up parts, we've got a fan clutch, we've got some 4-hole injectors, a fuel rail, fuel pressure regulator, HP tuner's tune, some 1.7 roller rockers, we've got a comp camshaft, we've got a catback exhaust, and a Banks revolver header. All right, this is our 97 TJ. It is a 4.0 with an automatic, and it's about as stock as it gets. It's got about 250,000 miles on it, and the old 4-liter runs as good as ever. We're gonna go ahead and use this as our test project here. We're gonna put it on the dyno. We're gonna see what it makes in stock form. And then we're gonna start bolting on parts. All right, I wanna take a couple quick seconds to mention today's video sponsor, TexasJeepProducts.com. They have a wide selection of Jeep 4.0 Wrangler performance parts. If you're into that sort of thing, go check out the website, TexasJeepProducts.com. And now let's get back to the video. This is the dyno we're gonna be using. It's a 248C. It's a big roller dyno. I think they're 3 feet in diameter. Weighs about 3,000 pounds, and it works really good. In my opinion, one of the most accurate dynos out there. Works really good because the weight of the rollers is very similar to the weight of the vehicle, so your load is very similarly proportioned to the load of the vehicle. Works a lot better than, say, like a load-based dyno where you have water brakes and eddy currents and, you know, friction brakes and stuff like that. They can heat up and change, and to some degree they're very user dependent. This thing, it is just one big chunk of mass, and it knows in the computer how much it weighs, and it knows what it takes to accelerate it. It does the math, figures it out, and that's how we get horsepower and torque. Very, very accurate. It'll repeat within 1 horsepower, sometimes even a little bit less, if everything else stays the same. And yeah, this is what we're going to be using for all the tests. All right, let's just talk a quick minute about how we're gonna do the tests and what order and what we're gonna be doing here. First things first, every time we do a modification, we're gonna put this thing on the dyno. We're gonna let it warm up for no less than a half an hour. We're gonna set a timer. I'm gonna put it in gear. I'm gonna let everything warm up, transmission, differential, everything warm up for about 30 minutes. And then once that 30 minutes is up, we'll do 3 pulls. We're gonna have to do second gear pulls because if we do third gear pulls, 1-to-1 pulls, we're gonna be way over 100 miles an hour, more than these tires can handle, more than the speed limiter will let us do. We're gonna do second gear pulls. We're gonna have to start at 2,500 so we don't get a downshift, and we'll go from 2,500 up to 5,000 RPM each time. I'm gonna give about 5 minutes. I'm gonna set a timer. We'll do 5 minutes in between each run for a cool down period. I'm not gonna shut the engine off. We're not gonna open the hood. It's gonna be very similar to the conditions you're going to have driving around on the street. You don't get to pull over and open the hood every stoplight. You know, on the trail, same sort of thing. You don't get to stop and open the hood all the time. We're gonna leave the hood shut. We're gonna let it heat soak. We're gonna do the runs with the hood shut. It's gonna be basically, you know, as close to real world conditions as we can get. The second thing we're gonna do once we're done with our 3 pulls, we'll let it cool down again for another 5 minutes. Then we're gonna do a 0 to 60 pull. I've kind of tried to figure out the best way to do that. It's a little bit tricky because hitting the sample button at the same time I'm pushing the gas leaves a little air, a little bit of air to be had there, but you know, we're gonna get it as close as we can. And we'll do the 0 to 60. Obviously it's not gonna be real world because we don't have road conditions, wind resistance, hills, you know, all that kind of stuff. The numbers are gonna be a little bit optimistic, we'll just say. But it should give us a good run-to-run comparison, the 0 to 60 as well, just to show us if our modifications are doing anything, because they're basically set on the same test premise, even if they're not real world. So that's what we're going to be doing. Right now I'm going to let this thing warm up for a little bit, and then we'll get started with our first runs. I'm just going to kind of show you what we've got here on the make run screen. We've got our speed, engine speed, we got brake temperature, air fuel. I'm gonna actually try and hook that up here in a minute. I have a Venturi style clamp thing that goes in the exhaust. I don't want to pull out any of the O2 sensors because I want everything on this vehicle to be 100% stock, and I haven't welded in another one yet. We might do that later, but for right now I'm gonna just try and do a clamp on one. There you can see our humidity, our air temperature, and barometric pressure, blah blah blah. Going back to, you know, the reason this dyno I feel like is more accurate than some of the other ones, there's nothing to mess with here. There's no compensation numbers. You know, you got some of the dynos, I'm not familiar with all of them. I've done some work on some Mustang dynos, you know, some of the other ones. There's some comps in there that guys can play with, knobs and buttons and switches and things that you can mess with that'll change the numbers. When we get the numbers out of here, it is what it is. We'll probably just do SAE corrected. We're not gonna do uncorrected or anything like that. We'll do SAE corrected. That takes into account these humidity, air temperature, blah blah blah, and you know, we'll just use that every single time. But that's really the only thing on a Dynojet that we can mess with. Everything else is preset. We can't go in modifying and changing things. So this is what it looks like on the front side. We're continuing to let this thing warm up. I do have one fan on here, kind of blowing some air in the radiator, sort of simulate driving down the road a little bit, but we're leaving the hood shut for all the runs. Got our tachometer hooked up here to the #1 spark plug wire. We should be able to get a pretty good engine RPM off of that. And like I said, I'm gonna try and hook up the air fuel, but besides that, it's all hooked up and just getting warmed up. Okay, there you can see we've got our air fuel hooked up. We got 15.0 air fuel, and all I did, come over here, it's still warming up here, but I've got this Venturi style thing. It's kind of all up in the tailpipe right there, but it's kind of it's got like a little tube on it that catches the exhaust and it brings it down. It's got a little clamp on it, and the sensor sits at the end, and then I ran the cord up through. Part of running a dyno is cord management. That's a big part of it. Trying to figure out where to run everything, and then you got to be part gymnast as well, climbing around all these cords. All right, so our 30-minute timer is up. It should be fully warmed up here. You can see it's just under 210. We also have a check engine light, which we haven't had up until this point. Got fuel, everything looks pretty good. We're gonna go ahead and start our first pull. So we're gonna do all of our pulls, like I said, in second gear. So we're gonna go ahead and get it up into second gear, and we'll start sampling at 2500. let's go see what we got. All right, let's adjust a few things here. Do engine speed down there. We got power over there. Let's do torque over here. And then let's display our max values. All right, so it looks like our horsepower, we got 123.98, and torque, we got 157.2. And it doesn't look too bad. Our smoothing's a little hot. Let's see, we can actually turn that down on here. Let's just go ahead and turn that off. And then we do have our, so the smoothing, like I was talking about, is over here. That just attempts to, you know, smooth out these curves a little bit. I want to see all the peaks and valleys when we're doing tuning like this. And then your correction factor up there, which is SAE right now. So it's taking into account the conditions, which we can display here as well. 92.3 degrees Fahrenheit and 29.6. 40 degrees, or I'm sorry, 40% humidity gives us an SAE correction factor of 1.03, so it's adding approximately 3% to our uncorrected numbers, which we can also look at. So if we go back to max values and the correction factors, we can go uncorrected, and you'll see we'll go from 124 to 120.7, and then it says uncorrected over here. But we're gonna just do everything as SAE, so it's all standardized and goes back to the 124.7, 159.3. And I'm gonna go ahead and set the timer then for 5 minutes, and we will come back and we'll do run number 2. All right, I don't know if you can see that or not, but I went ahead and I scanned the PCM using the torque app. Okay, looks like we have a cylinder 1 misfire detected, which I kind of thought maybe we did have a misfire. I can kind of hear this thing chugging a little bit. One of the first things that we're gonna do is the tune-up. We were gonna do that anyway as part of this whole dyno testing thing. We're gonna do a tune-up, and we're gonna replace the plugs, wires, cap, rotor, all that stuff. So it's actually kind of good. We're starting out with a little bit of a problem, misfire. We're gonna do some maintenance stuff. Maybe we'll see the power come up a little bit. And you know, that might be our biggest horsepower gain of anything, is just a good tune-up. So we're gonna go ahead and just finish these out with the check engine light on, and when we do the tune-up, before we do the next set of dyno runs, after we do the tune-up, after we do the tune-up, we'll go ahead, we'll clear the check engine light, and we'll start fresh. But for now, we're just gonna leave it as is. We're gonna keep on trucking, and we've got 22 seconds left here, and we can do our next dyno pull. Okay, our time has ended. It is time for us to go ahead and do the next set of pulls, or the next pull here. So I'm gonna go ahead, bring it to a complete stop. Okay, and we'll get the pendant here ready to go, and we'll go ahead, get it up to speed. $2,500 RPM in second gear. Sample. All right, let's see what we got. Okay, going right back to what we talked about earlier with the dyno. This thing will repeat within a horsepower, and the proof is right here. Run 1 was 124.7, run 2 123.9. We're within a horsepower there, 159.3 and 157.7. And you can see we started roughly at about the same place. The run carried all the way out to just past 5,000. The lines are pretty well overlaid right over top of each other. Just out of curiosity, let's go out of here, and we'll go over here into the main screen. We'll do 2 sets of graphs here, blow that up, and then we'll change this over here to air fuel. I'm just curious what it's saying that our air fuel is. It's cursor, whoops, cursor. So we are starting out at 13.0, dropping in the 12. Wow, it is going super rich on the top end. Look at that, 1138, 1136. Wow, that is really rich for an NA engine. Especially something stock like this. This does not need to be that fat. I wonder if that has something to do with our misfire, you know, causing it to richen up a little bit. Huh, that's interesting. Wow, okay. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and set the timer and we will get ready for the next pull. All right, our timer's going off. It is time to do the last pull. Go ahead, put it in gear, get it rolling. Second gear shift, coming up, 2,500 RPM. Run number 3 was highest yet, 125.0 and 158.4 foot-pounds of torque. And as you can see, looking over the graph, it is a lot more of the same. And we got our air fuel still pulled up down here. Let's take another look at that. Yep, very much the same thing. Ultra rich. Looks like we're making peak power around 4,500 RPM, give or take. And our peak torque is kind of right on tip in, actually. Pretty close, yeah, right about when we first tip in. So that's interesting. About 2,700 RPM according to this. There's a little bit of, I think, delay when you start to hit the sample and when this thing actually starts to record. So all right, well, I'm gonna go ahead, set our timer for 5 more minutes, and then we'll go ahead, do the 0 to 60, and we'll see what that has in store. Okay, our timer has expired. I'm gonna go ahead now, we're gonna do our 0 to 60 test. Basically, just gonna put it in drive, and I'm gonna try and hit the sample button at the same time I hit the gas. And once we hit 60, we'll stop everything, and that'll be our baseline 0 to 60, if we want to call it that. It's going to be truly going to be magazine numbers for us. I have a feeling like this thing's probably going to do 0 to 60 on the dyno in like maybe less than 8 seconds, which is not realistic at all. But I don't know, maybe I'll be surprised. Let's go ahead, we'll get it started, we'll see what happens. All right, so we're just gonna put it in drive. Ignore the indicator, it is stuck on first for some reason. Might have to learn to drive with 2 feet here. I'm gonna hold the brake with 1 foot, and then we'll put it in drive. We gotta prevent the rear tires from spinning, which is kind of difficult with this thing. All right, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna try and hit the gas, and you can be the judge. I'm gonna try and get my foot in here. I'm gonna hit the gas and the sample button at the exact same time, and then we'll let this thing romp up to 60. Are we ready? 3, 2, 1, go. All right. You'll have to be the judge and let me know how I did. I tried to be as quick on the gas as I could, but my coordination is probably not as good as it should be. Let's see what we got here. We're gonna have to go back out to the main screen and sort out some of this garbage. We're gonna go ahead and get rid of our first couple runs. So run 1, we'll get rid of that. We're gonna leave 4. We're gonna get rid of 3 and 2, and we will leave just run 1. And then we're gonna go down here and we're gonna change this engine speed to speed. And yeah, we're just gonna agree with whatever it says here. And all right, well, speed, there we go. I guess it didn't take the first time. Okay, so you can see it really doesn't start even though we started sampling right away. I don't think the dyno, like the, it's got some kind of an optical pickup sensor on the drum. Looks like it doesn't really start picking up until about 15 miles an hour, which is fine. You know, it's giving us the same sort of idea. But we start sampling all the way out. We hit 60 miles an hour out here. And actually what we're gonna do is we're gonna put time down here. That's what we need to do. There we go. And then we will change, let's see, move that up. We're gonna change the air fuel to speed. Okay. Now we've got speed over time with horsepower and torque on top. And then we can go up until we get right at 60 miles an hour, 59, right there, 60.00. And we're right at 8 seconds, 8.0. So I was really close with my estimate, and I swear I've not done this before with this vehicle, but yeah, right at 8 seconds, which like I said, is completely unrealistic. I don't think this thing could do 0 to 60 in 8 seconds. I really don't. I think it's probably closer to 10. We might have to do it on the street. We have the torque app. At some point we get this thing out of here, we can put the torque app on it and see, but kind of interesting. You know, big flare, horsepower, and torque on the shift makes it look like we have a lot of power, 175, 283. Totally unrealistic. It's just everything slipping and grabbing. Looks like in first gear we made like 112 roughly horsepower. Then in second gear like 118, and torque kind of was pretty flat around 150, 150 foot-pounds, 130 in first gear. Kind of interesting, little bump of speed there on the shift, but yeah, some good baseline numbers. So okay, this is our idle quality test, and all we're doing here is we're looking at a vibration monitor. It's part of the torque app. I think it uses the accelerometer in the phone, and we can just look at the data here and see we're getting some peaks of 0.1, kind of bouncing around here a little bit. But I wanted to get a baseline for our idle quality. You know, after we do the tune-up, we'll test it again. And also, you know, we've got those 4-hole injectors we're going to put in here, and I know some guys claim that that makes a pretty big difference. So we'll go ahead and get our baseline here for idle quality. And looks like about 0.1 plus 0.1 minus 0.1. Give or take, but it's a pretty good baseline. We'll see if we can improve on that. All right, well, that kind of wraps up our testing for today. We have some pretty good baseline numbers. We'll go ahead, we'll save all that data. That way we have data to compare it to later. The very next thing we're gonna do in the next episode is we're gonna go ahead and do our tune-up stuff. We're gonna do some ignition tune-up. We're gonna change some filters. Just basic, you know, a basic tune-up like a guy would do in his garage. We're gonna get all that done, then we'll put it back on the dyno. We'll see if we can get rid of that misfire. We'll clear out the codes, and we will see if that helps us pick up any more power, or if it doesn't make a difference at all. I don't know. We're gonna have to see. So if you want to see that and more of this kind of stuff, go ahead, like, subscribe, and thanks for watching.